Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Chai with Coaches. I'm here with my co-host, Naheed Overfeld. Naheed,
Hi, hello everybody. Nice to see them.
nice to see everybody too. Even though we can't really see them, but we can see each other, so it works out. Thanks for joining us today. We actually have a cool topic this afternoon. I was about to say this morning, but it's actually not morning. Um, yeah, so we're talking about behavioral change today in general, and more specifically, behavioral change when you're coming to make a massive change in your behavior and who you are and kind of the way you operate. So a lot of times this week I've met with a bunch of different clients who had similar issues. And Naheed, I'm not sure how you deal with this with your clients, but when I have clients who are talking to me about things that they want to do, like changes that they want to make in their lives, they often talk about these big changes that they want to make. And they're like, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds or 100 pounds, or I want to take my business from, $50,000 a year to $200,000 a year or something like that. And they're massive behavioral changes they need to make for themselves. In this case, with a couple of these clients, it was more about speaking up and kind of speaking up in meetings in front of CEOs, in front of people who have a much higher station than they do, and they don't necessarily feel confident speaking up like that. I don't know if you deal with that with your clients at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody who wants to work with a coach, they are wanting to change something important inside of them, right? They don't know how to get there. They want to get from A to B. And part of that is going to be a behavioral shift, a mindset shift, whatever you want to call it. It has to change in some way the way they operate. The way one of my clients calls it an operating system, that she's here to change that operating system within themselves. So absolutely, everybody wants to do something different.
Yeah, and there are a lot of approaches out there that call it like the Mind OS or Leadership OS, those kind of things like operating systems. But one thing that I try to tell my clients to do to make sure that they're doing for themselves is to not look at it as a one big shift, right? I mean, if you think about the brain and the way the brain operates, you have whatever age you are, that's how long your brain's been creating pathways in itself, right?
Mhm.
And it's solidified those pathways in terms of how it does stuff. So for example, if you've your entire life, let's say at 10 years old, you stopped saying I want to speak up. He's like, I'm not going to speak up anymore. I'm going to keep myself quiet. I don't want to rock the boat. And so when you're 40, you're like, now I need to start speaking up some more. You have 30 years of behavioral conditioning in your brain telling you not to speak up. So you're not going to change that overnight. And so for you to say, to go from zero to I'm going to go ahead and tell my boss that everything I think about why this approach is wrong, that's putting a lot of pressure on yourself, right? And so for the approach that I advocate is to take the opportunity to look for small wins, right? Little opportunities to try to create those small pathways for yourself. And over time, those pathways will get deeper and deeper and deeper. And so you're basically trying to create, a little channel, then a little stream, then eventually you get into the idea of having like the Grand Canyon. Because right now you have the Grand Canyon going the other way, where it says don't speak, and so you're trying to basically recreate the Grand Canyon eventually, which wasn't created overnight, to speak up. Does that resonate with you and your approach and how you talk with clients about stuff?
Well, what you're saying is absolutely true. I don't approach it necessarily that way. What the way I start with, because remember, just using your own analogy, if at 10 years old you decide not to speak up or you decide something particular, it was part of a coping strategy that was designed to keep you safe. And so what I help people understand is, what was that reason that somebody first decided to make that decision, whatever that decision happens to be. And then my goal as a coach is to get them into alignment. And what I mean by that is, so if you want to do this, so a client comes to me and they want to increase their exposure in front of a particular audience, let's say. So I want this, but I'm afraid to step into the spotlight. So I help them uncover what are the reasons why you're afraid of getting into that spotlight. And then let's again take incremental steps, because exactly what you say, I tell people that, when they ask me, how long is this going to take? I'm like, well, you're in your 50s, you've been dealing with this for decades. So let's at least say 6 months. Work with me for 6 months so that you can start seeing these shifts. So you're absolutely right. I just use slightly different language when I talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things getting to the why is actually one of the bigger issues, right? You got to understand why these things happen and why you have these beliefs. Where did this come from? What happened in your past? What made you create this quote unquote rule, this operating system that you have created for yourself, right? what made you create this rule for yourself? Why did you decide that this is the best way to go forward? Understanding that, and then what you're trying to avoid or what you're trying to go after, that's going to help you to ultimately make those shifts for yourself. But like you said, the small shifts, like I tell people, the same people who have problems speaking up in meetings often have problems sending back entrees that they ordered that are wrong at the restaurant. And so I'll tell them, like, look for those opportunities. Like, if when you go to a restaurant now, speak up. If you got the wrong thing, if you order, like you say, let's say you ordered with no mayonnaise and they put mayonnaise on it, speak up, say something differently, right? So, like, and get used to that. That's a small zero, well, some risk because they might spit in your food, but chances are if they don't spit in your food, you're probably fine. But as long as they don't have COVID or anything. But the thing is, though, you being able to identify those opportunities for yourself to say, okay, I'm going to speak up here because it's low impact. It's like trying to retrain your body, retrain your muscles. And that's another great analogy, is like looking at it in terms of lifting weights, right? You can't go from zero, never lifting weights in your life, to lifting 100 pounds and doing a bicep curl, right? You got to work up to that at some point. You start with 5 pounds, then 10, then you move up slowly over time. And if you go from 90 to 100, it's a smaller gap than if you go from 5 to 100, right? And so it's really a matter of like looking at things that way.
Yeah, and I think that we do it instinctively in other areas of our life. Where we fall into a trap is something that we have a strong agenda. If there's something that we're very desperate to do, and then we wait a long time, right? We don't wait 6 months or 1 year. We notice this over years, and then we wait a really long time, so that when we actually then get to working on it, it feels like if we have not made the progress that indicative of the amount of time we've been thinking about making progress, then we immediately say, okay, that's a failure. Yeah. So we wait a long time before we start tackling the situation. And then on top of that, it's something usually that we have a very strong agenda. If it was something else, if it was something that we didn't really care too much about, and we got 50% or even 30% of the way, we'd be like, oh yeah, this was more than what I expected. I see it as a win. I'm doing that with grass seeds. We're trying to plant grass seeds, and this is the worst time to be able to do it. But I'm like, you know what? We have them in the backyard. I mean, in our garage. Let's see it. If it grows, it grows. And if we get to 20, 30%, it's a win. It's because I don't have a strong agenda one way or the other.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to look at it too. And grass seeds are always actually an interesting metaphor too, because I always like to use the plant metaphors because the roots and everything like that, the understanding that whole thing, and giving it time to grow, because you can't force something to grow, right? It takes time. And so, it may be the completely wrong season to plant grass seeds, but that's a different conversation. But that's cool though. I mean, and so when you're talking with your clients, and I'm curious what you see on your side of things, when your clients are coming to you with these kind of things, what kinds of behaviors are they trying to change for themselves?
Okay, so the number one thing that I want people to understand is how the manifestation process works. So it doesn't matter. Some people come for weight loss issues. Ultimately, everybody comes to me because they're looking for more professional success. That's kind of what I work with. But in that process, we uncover a whole lot of other things, wellness being one of them, personal relationships being another one of them. And so what I'm trying to teach people in incremental steps is how to retrain your brain, very similar to what you said, using particular statements so that the minute your thought goes to, oh, this isn't going to work. So I'll give you a very good example. Just recently, a client of mine said that, she wakes up in the morning and she thinks, 60, 70, 80% of her believes that things are not going to work out. So one of the things I said to her is, hey, I would like you to look at the last 6 months and really evaluate, is that true? If that statement is true, then it's true. We're not going to do anything about it at the moment. But is it really true? Because what's happened is she's gotten to a habit. And so as soon as she starts noticing, okay, this is what I'm going to say habitually, I want you to stop, think about what you're saying, and ask yourself, is this really true in this moment? Because from a physiology perspective, a neurology perspective, I'm an undergrad biopsychology major, so I love talking about this stuff. Your neurons wire together when they fire together. And what I mean by that is the more they think the same thought, you do create those superhighways. And we're just creating small little streets, inroads, whatever it happens to be, so that they're rethinking about how they perceive a particular situation. So many different reasons that they come to me for that. but I want them to understand, how does the manifestation process work? Because if you're going to focus on that, guess what? That's what you're going to get.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I'm watching the rain. It just started pouring here, by the way. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's definitely coming down. And so I'm watching the rain flow outside, the water flow, and it's like those pathways have formed over time. Like I said, that the Grand Canyons or those kind of things. And you think about it in terms of, like you said, the neurons that fire together, they get used to firing together, so you end up being like neuron clusters. And so when you associate, that's why behavioral change is such an interesting thing. When you are looking at associating behaviors, we're human beings are amazing at creating associations, right? That's why a lot of things work the way they do. That's why triggers and anchors work the way they do. People say the word like I'm triggered like so often to the point where it's lost its meaning. But in reality, a trigger requires some kind of anchor, some kind of behavioral situation where it's like you're anchored to a stimulus of some sort. It's a stimulus response thing, like Pavlov's dogs. If everyone knows that story, the short version is that Pavlov trained these dogs to salivate just at the smell of meat powder, as opposed to the smell of actual meat or actual meat right being there, right? So the ringing the bell now, when they ring the bell before they get fed, they associate that bell now with food that has nothing to do with food otherwise. And so now whenever they smell this, or whenever they hear the bell, then they start salivating because they're associating that bell with food, even though they're not getting any food. They don't see the food. They don't even smell the food now. They just have the bell. And that's how triggering and anchoring works. That was a trigger for them, essentially. He anchored that bell as that sound for the trigger. And you can do that as yourself with certain behaviors by associating behaviors together. That's why routines are so powerful sometimes over time, because when you create a routine, you're creating for yourself a set of anchors that one leads into the other naturally. And I don't know what you guys, but when I used to drive to work. I used to commute every day to work, right? I used to take 295 to 495, 495 to 355, and then go from there. And when I stopped taking that route to go to work, when I stopped going somewhere else, a couple of times I actually was on autopilot, and I just took 295 to 395 to 495, and I was like, shit, I'm not supposed to go on 495. I got to go straight. I actually had to get off and get back on because I just went the wrong way because I was so used to doing that. It was an autopilot thing for me, right? It was unconsciously I created that association for myself and that pattern for myself to do. And so when you do that, you can do that with habits. You can do that with your routines in the mornings. And you can create a routine for yourself that associates that routine with being productive, or with success, or with being, just happy in general. And you described a story before we jumped on that I wanted to ask you to share in terms of like the losing twice story. I want to ask you about that, and that actually comes in is really relevant here, because when you create that kind of story for yourself, story of success beforehand, it's almost creating that same kind of routine.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I used to be was I used to be a Toastmaster. And Toastmasters, I don't know if, for those of you who are not familiar, they have all these different competitions. And my club decided that they were going to enter a competition. They persuaded me to join the competitions. I won the club level competition, no problem. Then I went on from there is the area level competition. Again, won that, no problem. Then I go to the division level competition, no problem. And I'm at that place where I'm right about to get into the district level competition. Okay. Actually, sorry, step back. One more, the division level competition. So there's a group of us contestants. There are 10 of us over here sitting in the room. And the way the competition works is you hear a test speaker, and then you're given 5 minutes to come up with your speech. Nothing you can prepare ahead of time. So all of us were busily trying to create our speech so that we could give the best speech in such a short amount of time. With one exception, there was one person in that room. He said, "Oh, this is nothing. Every time I enter a competition, I win. I've got dozens of these competitions that I have won. I went to another chapter and they were having a competition. I didn't even know when I won." So as he was talking through this with somebody else, I was thinking to myself, well, what chance do I have? I've never entered these competitions except for the prior chapter and area competition. What chance do I have of winning? Absolutely none. This guy's been in Toastmasters for 18 years. He's a coach, he's a speaking coach. And so this was going through my head. And what I recognized in that moment, that I was literally losing in my head, right? Forget reality. I was literally losing in my head. And I had minutes to be able to shift that mindset around. And so I had to think about what could I anchor onto, to use your words, to be able to get me to shift that immediately. So the easy way for me to do it, because I couldn't come up with, oh, I'm going to win and actually feel confident about that. This was what I told myself. I said, somebody has to win, and why can't it be me? Very simple, very straightforward, but that was that one little step that got me from focusing on this person who's won hundreds of awards, me who's only won up to the area competition. And that was enough. That was just enough for me to be able to say, you know what? I'm not going to just throw it away in my head. And if I threw it away in my head, guess what? I'm going to throw it away in reality. And shockingly enough, that was enough to get me to actually beat this person who's never been beaten in any of these competitions before. So that's why it's really important to pay attention to what's going on into your head, because if you lose in your head, you are almost guaranteed to lose in real life. And that's why I call it you're losing twice. First in your head and then out in reality.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And it reminds me of actually in law school, in first year of law school, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was kind of freaking out about the first year. She's like, "Oh my God, it's so hard. These exams. I don't know how we're gonna do this. It's been one of those things where it's like really tough, and she's never had to do this kind of thing." And she's like, "Oh, just like stressing out." And I was like, "Look, I don't think that you're any dumber than anyone else, and I don't think I'm any dumber than anybody else who's been here before us, right? I know some real idiots who are lawyers. I know some real idiots who are second years, for God's sake, who are in the same school as us, right? We know them. We're friends with some of them, and I say that idiots affectionately for them. But there's some real idiots out there as well who are lawyers and who've gone through first year law school and second and third and actually graduated and passed the bar. And so I was like, if they can do it, we can do it, and that actually made her feel better, thankfully. And she ended up becoming pretty successful. But point being, though, that there's a couple ways to handle that. Like you said, you can psych yourself out and lose in your head already before it even started, right? And that's a huge loss, because you're not going to even be motivated to do anything. You're not going to feel like you can even. It's like no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, it's not going to matter, right? That approach will ultimately help you to fail, because you're giving up before you even try, right? You've lost a battle before you had the chance to fight it. But then the other side of things is yeah, it's worth fighting. I'm going to try for it and do the best I can. And if I don't get it, I know I will at least know that I've tried for it, right? And did the best you can. And chances are, if you do, I mean, for me, I've always done better in the classes I thought that were hard in school, rather than the ones I thought were easy. The ones I thought were easy, I kind of skated a little too easily with, and the ones that were hard, I thought of them as being hard. So I worked extra hard for those to make sure that it didn't fall behind. And it's interesting how that kind of flip flops in your head, right? It's about kind of what you, like I said, kind of what you manifest and what you create for yourself, because you're creating your own success. And with clients that I talk to about these kinds of concepts of fear holding them back, or what's on the other side of fear for them, that's one of the biggest questions that they have to answer for themselves, is what's holding them back and why. What are they afraid of? And a lot of times it's just they're just afraid of failing, or afraid of not being able to live up to what they want to do. And if they give up beforehand, getting them through that idea of like, look, you can either give up now, because if you think you're going to fail, then there's no point. You just might as well spend your time and energy doing something else. And that typically lets a fire under their butts, because they actually want to do it. And they're like, no, why would I give up now? Well, if you're going to fail, then if you know you're going to fail, then why even do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things my coaches and I, a few years back, I'm like, you know what, this is too hard. I don't want to do it. And he's like, okay, then quit now. And I was like, what do you mean, right now? And he's like, yeah. Why are we wasting money? Why are we wasting time? Go do something else. Quit now. And I was like, well, I don't really want to quit. And what it did was it really inspired me to say exactly what you said. Well, if other people are doing it, why can I not do it? Like, what about me specifically is so bad that it wouldn't succeed? And finally, the answer was nothing other than the fact that I was too afraid to take the big steps. But here's the really interesting thing about fear. Again, we come to coaches, we focus on big areas in our life, whatever kind of success that happens to be. But I can guarantee you that if you have fear taking steps in towards your goal, that big goal that you're looking at, you probably have fear in many, many different areas, and you're holding yourself back in many, many different areas. It's just that all your attention is on that one side.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just this that I was holding myself back from, it's from life experiences that I was holding myself back from. And that's the true tragedy. Like one goal, not such a big deal. All of life, it becomes a lot more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And who you are in one area of your life is who you are in most areas of your life. You know what I mean? It's you're the same person showing up differently in different parts of your life. So if fear is controlling you in one part, it's probably controlling other parts. You know, I tell a lot of folks, you know, folks who are afraid to spend money, afraid like last year, a lot of businesses were afraid to spend money on marketing, on coaching, on anything. They were like, oh, we got to hold on to our money. Well, okay, you hold on to your money, and what are you going to do with it? You're still to spend it. Your money's going out. It's not really coming in. If you're not spending it on anything, why do you want to spend it on these things you're already spending it on, right? Why have you allocated for these different things? And I tell folks who are like, oh, I only have X amount of money to spend on marketing, or X amount of money to spend on coaching, and I'm like, okay, how much do you have to spend? If it's not enough to get that thing done properly, then it's not worth spending money at all. You know, like why would you if think about it in terms of pipes in your house. If you have to get your pipes replaced and you get 10 quotes for $10,000 around that much, and you get one quote for $100, are you going to go with the one for $100? The guy who's like, you can replace all your pipes for $100. Are you going to go with that one just because it's cheaper? No, probably not, because chances are you're going to get what you pay for, right? Now, if you don't have $10,000 to replace your pipes, then that $4,000 that you have is probably better spent somewhere else, rather than spending just like trying to get the cheapest possible version of whatever that is, because that's going to break again in a year. You don't want to deal with that. You don't want to have to deal with getting poor quality services or products, right? So what's the point? Don't waste the money on something like that. Don't let fear hold you back in that sense of things, you know?
Absolutely. So, as you were talking, I was thinking, can we give our listeners a few tips on how to break down a big goal so that they feel like they're on track, because that's part of it. And then the other part of it, that they're getting those incremental wins. Because you don't have to win at every step, but if you win at enough steps, it gives you the confidence to be able to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I tell my clients to break things down, like I said, into the small actions, right? Look at the size of the actions themselves. Like if you have a goal of talking to your, like again, speaking up to your boss, for example, or presenting to a board of advisors, or a board of investors, potential investors for you, right? That's why practicing works, is it's all like very small versions of that thing, right? So do those small actions, say those small actions you can. Try to break it down as much as possible into smaller actions. So you have a massive project, for example, right? You're talking about a 6-month project to get this thing done. What is the smallest task on that list? Make that your first goal. Get that first task done. Then go to the second task and break it down into each individual step. If you have 1,000 steps, you got 1,000 steps. But 1,000 small steps is better than one massive one. You're going to try to jump and miss it, right? And so that way you're able to see for yourself, what's the logical breakdown of these things? What needs to happen in order for that thing to happen at the end? So if you start at the end and work your way backwards, that's another way to do it that I help people look at too. Because when you're starting at the very end, if you're just looking at the end result and you're not thinking about what needs to happen to get there, it's easy to skip steps and forget things, right? But ask the question: what needs to happen to get that to happen over there? Okay, this has to happen. Okay, what has to happen for that to happen? This needs to happen, and then work your way. Ask that question over and over, back and back and back, until you get to exactly where you are right now, to this very moment, and that's going to help you to get there, to break it down into those steps.
Yeah, and I really recommend that people write down the steps, because I'll tell you, if you keep it in your head, which a lot of us have a tendency of doing, you are going to get overwhelmed very quickly. And what the other thing that I find a lot with my clients, when they keep things in their head, they cannot relax because they're too afraid they're going to miss something. So it's like constantly on repeat in your short term memory. You don't want to keep your short term memory focused so much on these tiny steps along the way, because what's going to happen is you'll lose your peace of mind. You're not going to be able to sleep. This is where you get anxious and overwhelmed, because you won't be able to drop it. You want to be able to drop it when you need to and pick it back up where you need to. So I'm a big list person. I have tons of lists, check marks. I love them. Scratch them through when they're done. But make sure that you write it down, because two things will happen. One is you can actually drop it out of your short-term memory. You can leave it. But the second thing is that when we have something written down and we know exactly what the next step is, we have a tendency to do it without wasting time. Otherwise, we're like, oh, I don't really know. I don't know where to go. And so we tend to procrastinate. Having it on a list really helps. Are
Yeah,
you a list person, Drew?
it can be. Yeah, I do like lists. My dad taught me about lists when I was very young. He loves lists. Like he has a list for everything. I think he has a list of his lists. But I do like lists for getting tasks done and like and making sure like I capture all the different steps, like you said, because it's very easy to miss a step. It's very easy to forget something and like, oh crap, I forgot that one thing I need to get done to make sure that this also everything else happens. I also tell people to make sure that they indicate what are contingencies, right? What are the big things that they need to get done? Sorry, Hachi's at my feet now because it's pouring outside and it's thunderstorming, so he's just here now. Uh, but
He's terrified.
yeah, he's kind of scared. So that's what happens with him. But no, I mean, in terms of the listing, I tell people to look at contingencies, right, and prioritize, and see things that what are the things that are dependencies, right? Like say, like you have three things on a list, and of those three things, the next list, 10 things depend on number two. So get number two done first, so you can get those other things rolling. If once you finish those first three things, right, and get those things prioritized in that way, because that's going to free up your time a lot more. If you get one and three done and forget about two, and then suddenly that thing becomes a higher priority later on, you're not going to be able to get those things done in as quickly as you want to get them done. So try to look at things that have dependencies, right, and that require you to get them done sooner than later, and try to prioritize those first. So that way you're opening up the most options for yourself in the future.
That's very effective and efficient, I should say. I do the opposite. I tell people, and this is what I do, go for the easiest. Start
Mm.
with the easiest. Get those big wins, tiny wins, whatever you want to call them. Just start the process. I don't want people to be stuck on anything, but definitely the faster way, the more efficient way is doing things so that you're not wasting time waiting for one thing to be done before you move on to the next thing. But for people who tend to procrastinate, go for the easiest, go for what feels like it's going to be less cumbersome to get done, and then you will, as you start. So, our human psychology is so amazing in this way, because once you start getting rolling on a project, you might not have initially thought it would be so much fun, but you actually enjoy it because you're enjoying the success of finishing task upon task or project upon project. Just that in itself motivates us to move forward.
If it's the right thing for you. If it's something where it's not something that really means anything to you, it's just literally tedious work, then you don't really give a damn. You know?
True, but if you have to do it,
Yes.
it gives you some comfort to be able to say to check the boxes. Now, if you have to do that 8 hours a day every day, you're going to get tired of it very quickly.
Correct.
But once in a while, when you have to do stuff, which let's say we all have to do stuff that we don't care to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I tell people, I think whatever approach works for them. I think some people you like the
Yes.
low-hanging fruit approach that works well for some people. Some people like the prioritization approach. I think whatever approach works for you, and you will know what best works for you in your situation. But the most important thing I think is keeping momentum, right? Getting the momentum built and keeping that going. And so whatever helps you build momentum more effectively, whether that's low-hanging fruit to build the momentum to start going and then just going through with stuff, or whether it's jumping right in and getting the biggest impact things done first. That's up to you. What makes more sense for you? So
Absolutely. So I want to share a quick story. I have added myself to a bunch of different directories, and one of the directories that I've added my name onto is Psychology Today. And so I got, finally, after a few months, I actually got somebody who reached out to me. Now, it wasn't the right fit. They wanted somebody who took insurance, which, coaching, we don't take insurance. Insurance
right.
companies don't take us. And so I was actually a little bummed at it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to rethink how I look at this. So I broke it down into, for me to be successful on Psychology Today, 4 things need to happen. The first thing is somebody has to find me, okay? Just in the state of Maryland, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are listed on there. The second thing that they need to do is they need to reach out to me, because if they don't reach out, I don't even know they're interested in me. The third thing is for us to book a consultation. And then the fourth thing, the final part, is to be able to say, okay, hey, let's work together. So 4 steps are what I've decided I need to be successful on there. And so instead of just saying, okay, I got this prospect, it didn't work out, I stepped back and I looked at it as I came up with these 4 things, and I said 2 out of the 4 happened, which is not bad, right? I mean, it's part of it is a numbers game, but I had to look at what was successful. The first part was I didn't even know if I was going to be seen in such a crowded space. Somebody recommended it, my EFT mentor recommended it, so that's really why I decided to just give it a try. So at least the two first steps, which if you didn't go through the first two steps, there would be no way we were going through the number 3 and number 4.
Actually, you got
So
3 out of 4, didn't you?
no, because she didn't set up a consultation.
Oh, so how'd you know it wasn't going to fit?
She just wanted somebody who, I said, good fit from the fact that she wanted someone who took to insurance.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah. So from that perspective, it really got me to reevaluate whether I thought that whether I should continue moving forward with this, because all of a sudden I was like, hey, I actually feel quasi successful in that experience, because at least now I know people can find me. I'm not just so deeply buried in there.
And if you want to get technical, you're actually semi-successful, not quasi, because you got 2 out of 3. I mean, 2 out of 4. So semi.
There you go. Even better.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we're out of time today in the heat. But thanks for tuning in as always. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the topic today. If you have concepts of things that you want to do behavioral change wise, things you want to start doing that you haven't been able to do for a while, reach out to us. Let us know. Comment below in the comment section and let us know what are some things you're trying to adopt for yourself. New habits, dropping old habits, whatever it looks like for you. Let us know what you've been doing for yourself behavioral change wise and what you want to improve and how you've been approaching it for yourself.
Yeah, we would love to know what other resources there are out there. There are thousands, if not millions, of resources on helping people. So we'd love to hear from you guys as to what's been successful for you, right? What are the things that are really working well? And of course, if you have areas where you feel like you're stuck, then reach out. That's what we're here for.
And as always, like and subscribe to the channel, and share this with anyone you think might be relevant for. If they're looking to go through some behavioral change for themselves, show them this video, let them take a look at it and see if it resonates for them. But thanks again all for tuning in. Talk to you guys soon. We'll see you guys in a few weeks. And remember, there's no Meaningful Monday on Monday, but next Thursday we do have a small business spotlight. So tune in for that. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great 4th of July weekend. Have an awesome and safe time. And Naheed, what are you doing for the 4th of July? Anything fun?
Gardening.
Okay, so is that a yes or no? I don't know.
No.
Okay. Some people like gardening, so it could be fun for some people. Nice. So I'll be in Chicago, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, that's my hometown.
Is it really?
I was in Chicago for all these years working at Ernst & Young.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know that. Wow.
I used to work at the Sears Tower at glorious floor number 10, where even the parking lots were higher than I was.
Well, we'll say hi to I'll say hi to it when I get there for you. So
good thing.
All right. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and have an awesome holiday.
Bye-bye.